record, I am now 46,370 words in the novel, so. Also, I'm very allergious today, so I'm a little out of breath, so bear with me. So, my great-grandparents were Polish immigrants who, according to my grandmother, were full of lots of folksy, farmery, immigrant-y wisdom that they passed down to her. One of the sayings that she picked up from her mother was, roughly translated from Polish, "You can plant a seed, but you might never see if it grows." I would hear her say this as a kid, and either she was talking about gardening or farming. But when I was in junior high, I realized she would say this when the conversation was about anything except gardening or farming. But I never really understood her point, and I just chalked it up to something getting lost in translation. You can plant a seed, but you might never see if it grows. Okay. So, about 15-ish years ago, my friend Holly was having an apartment warming party, which is kind of like having a wedding reception for a week-old relationship. But I showed up to be supportive. Holly grew up in the North Shore, and so her party was full of these very straight, very entitled former fraternity and sorority types who were very pleased with themselves. The quintessential Trixies and Chads. I was bored pretty much the minute I got there because I'm the only gay guy in a room full of straight people, so not much fun for me. One of the guys in the party, though, he was this bro guy. Everything about him could be summed up by the way he greeted everyone who he came in contact with, which was like, "Dude!" He was that guy from college who'd been like the social chair at Lambda Chi for 6 years, and he hadn't yet realized that he and everyone he knew were now in their late 20s, and the frat party had ended years ago. But he was really loud, and you couldn't avoid hearing him no matter where he was in Holly's apartment. One of the things I kept hearing him say to people, though, his catchphrase, if you will, was, "Don't go bipolar on me, dude." Isn't that the dumbest thing to say? And I've heard him say this at least 3 or 4 times during the course of the evening. As the night wore on, I found myself backed into a corner talking to a group of people that included Holly and Bro Dude. Sure enough, once again, he said to someone, "Dude, don't go bipolar on us." Holly, who by this time had waded knee-deep into her second box of wine, said to him, "Oh, you shouldn't say that. Mitch has bipolar." So I'm thinking, "Gee, Holly, thanks for outing me to a room full of strangers." And then he said, "Oh man, you're not gonna go crazy on us, are you, dude?" Something snapped in me. I turned a corner, turned a page. I was over it. Because this wasn't the first time I'd heard that. He wasn't the first person to say that to me, or something equally obnoxious after finding out I have bipolar. So I said to him, "If Holly had just told you I had cancer, would you be mocking me right now? Because 1 out of 4 people with bipolar die from it. Is that funny to you?" I don't know how this happened. Maybe the conversation in the entire room just happened to go to a lull coincidentally as I said that. Or maybe I was just really loud and everyone heard me. But the party conversation came to a screeching halt. I had a kind of embarrassed moment, and I just want to slide out of that room. But that was a turning point for me. I'd already taken a lifetime of crap from stupid people for being gay. I wasn't about to take it for having bipolar also. I don't tell people I have bipolar now unless I have to. The term is too loaded, and people always make the wrong assumptions. Now I just say I have a brain chemistry imbalance, and it usually comes up because I don't drink alcohol. So if I'm offered to take a glass of wine, I just say no thank you, but I've turned down enough alcohol over the years to know that people don't like to drink alone, and they're gonna push. And then I say I have this brain chemistry issue, alcohol makes it worse, no thank you, it usually gets me to drop it. But when I do talk about it, I don't say I have bipolar disorder, because it isn't disordering my life. It has in the past, but I've learned how to manage it for the most part, and I think I've done pretty well with it. I never say I am bipolar. People with mental illnesses have to be such strong advocates for ourselves, but it's easy to fall into the trap of assuming it as an identity, and then rattling off every diagnosis as if it were lines on a resume. So you'll hear people say to complete strangers in casual conversation, things like, "I'm bipolar type 1 with rapid cycling mood swings, OCD, free-floating social anxiety, periodic bouts of homicidal rage, and an intense margarine phobia." I don't rattle off the list. One diagnosis is too much for me. I would avoid a conversation entirely if I can. Bipolar is just something I have. It's not who I am. I also think that the I am statement is very declarative. It's like, I am bipolar. I define bipolar, you know? It's a little dramatic. For treatment, I went the pharmaceutical route in my late 20s at the urging of my doctors, and I lost my entire 30s to those medications. They're very powerful drugs, and I just felt trapped inside my own mind. Eventually, I didn't even recognize myself. The first medication I was put on caused me to gain 35 pounds in 4 weeks. After being on them for 14 years, I gained a total of 75 pounds. This was troubling to me for many reasons. One reason was it was causing a lot of other health problems. But also, whenever I brought it up to my doctors, it was dismissed as either proof that the medication was not working because I was obviously overeating and therefore clearly still depressed, or proof that the medication was working well because I was obviously overeating and therefore clearly feeling better. That the weight gain was a side effect of the medication was either diminished or dismissed outright by my doctors. No matter what, the message was I was at fault. Finally, at 39, with the big 4-0 looming, I made the decision to lose that weight no matter what. It took almost 2 years. I had to change meds a few times and doctors, but I did it, and it led me to take a more holistic approach to my health entirely. Thank you. Everyone who has bipolar, though, pays some kind of price. For me, the price I pay is loneliness. I have a tendency to isolate myself unintentionally, and so I spend a lot of time by myself, probably too much, and my friendships can drift away. I have some milestones coming up this year that I'm kind of uncomfortable to admit, even to myself. This October marks 10 years of my being single. Up until a few months ago, I hadn't been on a date in 3 years. And if I go back even further, the last time I kissed a man I loved was 22 years ago. And I remember that kiss. And that makes me sad, because I never thought at my age now, always being alone and having no one to love would be my reality. But here's the catch. I'm almost as fearful of falling in love as I am of getting hurt or being rejected. If I'm attracted to someone, my first impulse is just to avoid him. So if you ever see me on a date, it's a safe bet he asks me out, because I will rarely take the risk of rejection. The way I describe having bipolar is there's no ceiling over my joy, no floor below my sadness, and no walls around my anger. If I get hurt, it's across the universe and back. It's big, huge, overwhelming. But it's the same thing if I fall in love with someone. It's just as big, just as huge, just as overwhelming. And if I get really angry, I know I don't look it, but I can be scary. Bruce Banner's got nothing on me. If I'm in the middle of a mood swing, sometimes it's better if I just stay in bed. But with a new mortgage and a student loan for my pricey Northwestern master's degree, that's not always an option. I have obligations and people are relying on me. And I also know, every time I drive through an underpass and I see homeless people living under it, that I could be one of them. I've come dangerously close to homelessness a few times in my 20s and early 30s. Because when getting your thoughts to stop racing for even a few minutes, or to get your brain to stop telling you you're the most worthless piece of shit on the planet every hour of every day, or just getting out of bed, takes Herculean effort. It's practically impossible to hold a job, pay bills, maintain relationships, and take care of yourself. And because I don't want to live heavily medicated anymore, and I don't want to be homeless, and I do want to be employed, I have to actively monitor myself all the time, and that can be exhausting. But I've gotten really good at it. Maybe too good. I've been told I'm quiet, distant, aloof, distracted, even intimidating. And it's not my intention, but I think I'm perceived that way because I'm always having to think about how I'm feeling and then how I'm responding to people all the time. And I'm not always successful at that. None of this is second nature with me. But when I get tired, I lose my filters and my mouth starts running. You'll know when this is happening because every other word out of my mouth is fuck or some variation of it. And that's when I know it's time to go home. So with all of that, what gives? I have no one to love, and I am the architect of my own loneliness. The irony and the cruelty of this is not lost on me. At my age now, the cynical Gen Xer in me thinks that the dating pool is drying up to become a dating mud puddle. But the optimist in me thinks maybe my prince is swimming around in that mud puddle and he'll still show up one day. So I'm choosing to live in hope. I sold my condo in Edgewater last summer, and I bought a new loft in Bronzeville, which I love. But during the new condo search, I went to an open house for a loft in the West Loop. When I got there, the listing agent was none other than Bro Dude from that party. I wanted to duck out the second I saw him. It wasn't like I could go up to him and say, hey, remember me? I cut you off at the knees at Holly's party about 15 years ago. But I also really wanted to see that loft, and I just thought he wouldn't remember. Before I could escape, he went into real estate agent mode, started telling me about the place. I looked around, picked up a listing flyer, was about to leave when he stopped me. I think we met several years ago, he said a bit hesitantly. Oh crap, I thought, so close. I was trying to get out the front door. At Holly's? You kind of schooled me. You remember that? I do remember, yes, I said. I'm sorry, my anger was really about me, it wasn't about you. He said, no, it's okay. What you said to me that night, it really stuck with me. I've thought about it a lot. I wanted to apologize to you about that. I said, oh no, it's a long time ago. But he cut me off. My wife has bipolar, he said. I've had to put her in the psych ward twice. It can get really bad. I thought about what you said a lot that night. You were right. There's nothing funny about this. What else can you do in a situation like that? I told him I hoped she was doing better, offered some advice. We chatted a bit. Have you seen Holly? Blah, blah, blah. And before I left, I gave him a hug. And as I was walking back to the train, in spite of my best effort not to, I started to cry. I could hear my grandmother's voice whispering in my ear, you can plant a seed, but you might never see if it grows. But sometimes, if you wait long enough, you do. I'm Mitch Hagan, that's my story, thank you.